I would now like to call to order the October 5th, 2022 meeting of the Indiana State Board of Education. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bess?
Present.
Ms. DeLosa?
I think I heard her online.
Mr.
Is-
Durham?
Present.
Dr. Ernest?
Present.
Mr. Gastineau?
Here.
Ms. Hamel?
Here.
Mr. Mapes? Ms. Moat?
Here.
Ms. Rentschler? Mr. Watts?
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Jenner?
Here, thank you. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the September 21st, 2022 meeting?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
With a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Well, good morning to our fairly empty auditorium. Hopefully, everyone is joining online today, like several of our board members. We do have a few people we are thrilled to hear from today. We met as a board just 2 weeks ago, and as many probably know, by state law, we're required as a board to meet monthly, with or without action. So today, what's exciting is we have three key presentations for us to hear as a board, as a state, updates on some of the exciting work that is happening. I do want to point out that Monica called the roll today, which Chad Ranney, our general counsel for the State Board of Ed and Indiana Department of Education, is not here. And about 48 hours from our last meeting, Chad welcomed his first child, a baby boy. So we congratulate Chad as he is on leave for a few more weeks in celebration and support of raising a child. So we're really thrilled for Chad. It's amazing how many things happen just in a short time. Let me update you on a few things. Last week we announced the top 3 candidates for Indiana Teacher of the Year. As you know, as a board and as a state, we have 63,000 teachers. So to be in the top 3 is really something. I'm going to say their names. Jason Beer, who is an English teacher at Homestead High School in Fort Wayne. Tara Kokenauer, a World and AP U.S. History teacher at Bluffton High School in Bluffton. And then Josh DeBeard, a social studies teacher at Lebanon High School in Lebanon. So congratulations to our 3 finalists. Very soon we will be naming Indiana's Teacher of the Year, so stay tuned. We also announced, very exciting, I know for several members on the board, Indiana's first ever educator apprenticeship. Really, I should say federally registered apprenticeship. We're so proud of the team who led this. Carrie Lively in Hamilton County led this partnership with Ball State University. I saw President Mearns yesterday and we talked quickly about this. But the hope is that this is the first of its kind in Indiana, and that additional alliances in the apprenticeship space will occur. But we're certainly really proud of the team there who've launched Indiana's first educator-focused federal apprenticeship. I would also like to give a quick shout out to the Commission of Higher Education. They are partners to us as a board, and they recently welcomed 2 new associate commissioners One is an associate commissioner for the adult strategy, but pretty cool, one is a new commissioner focused on the K-12 strategy. That whole focus there with Commissioner Lowry and the Board of Commissioners of Higher Education is to not only acknowledge but lean in on the real opportunity in blurring those lines between K-12, higher ed, and the workforce. So really pleased to welcome Michelle Ashcraft was named the Associate Commissioner for K-12 Strategy, and Dr. Stacey Townsley was named the Associate Commissioner for Adult Strategy. Welcome to the team. 2 weeks ago, we had two, how about that to get going? We had two very cool gala-related celebrations that were shared with the department, in follow-up of our big event in early September. The first one was out of Pleasant View Elementary School, part of the Zionsville Community Schools, and they had their very own gala day with all of their students, all of their teachers. They rolled out the red carpet, literally, rolled out the red carpet, asked students to, wear your best, and they celebrated together their work in the Excellence in Early Literacy, which is the award that they won. So really, really proud of them. I also saw Eastern Randolph celebrated their award by taking that, became like a traveling trophy that they took around to all the schools. They took around to, the custodians, they took around to the transportation department, but everyone owning that award. Today, we're really thrilled to hear from Superintendent of Charles A. Beard Memorial School Corporation, Jediah Benny, and his team, Principal John Boyer, Principal of Knightstown Intermediate School, Darcy Cooper, who is a sixth grade English teacher at Knightstown Intermediate, and Megan Folkening, eighth grade English teacher at Knightstown Intermediate, who are gonna share a little bit more about the award that they received, how they celebrated, but also how they made it happen, how they were able to make the moves as a school corporation to really close some key gaps for students. I'd also like to finally recognize board member who is actually online today, Iris Hamill, who just last month was recognized by Elevate Awards as a 2021 Community Champion in North Central Indiana. So congratulations to board member Iris. So at this time, I'll open it up for any board member comments or reports. Seeing none today, and we do not have public comment, just to confirm in the back there. Monica, no public comment. Great. So let's move forward and get to our discussion items today. We'll start again with the team from the Charles A. Beard Memorial School Corporation, their presentation on academic gains that they achieved. Welcome.
Good morning. My
Good
name is
morning.
Jediah Benny. I'm Superintendent of Schools for Charles A. Beard Memorial School Corporation. I have the privilege today of introducing three very important members of our team, but I also just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Estes, Secretary Jenner, and everyone else who played a role in the Educational Excellence Award. People have been working so hard in our school communities that sometimes we forget to stop and celebrate those successes. This couldn't have come at a better time for us. It has been rejuvenating for our entire school community, and the money's not so bad either. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Mrs. Darcy Cooper, Mrs. Megan Folkening, and Principal John Boyer.
Good
morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much for having us. Again, as Mr. Beatty just said, thank you so much for this recognition. To say it re-energized our school corporation would be an understatement. How we celebrated it, we actually joked and said, why did we not do a red carpet thing? But what we did was we actually re-presented the award to our entire school. Brought everyone in for a quick convocation in the morning, and I think we took a couple selfies with the award, and just thanking everyone for their hard work. But it has been such a positive for our school corporation, especially when I first started, and just the changes that we made. I'd love to stand up here and tell you that we reinvented the wheel, and we came up with a magic formula that this is what we did, and if every school does this, this is what will happen. But really, when I started 3 years ago, it'd be going on 4 now, my assistant at the time, her name is Sarah Stevenson. She's now the principal at our elementary. We focused on 2 main areas, obviously academics, but we really wanted to look at cultural changes. And I was joking with someone yesterday that if we did the academic change, or if we did the cultural changes and we didn't do any academics, would we have the growth that we had? Potentially, you know, it could happen. But if we only did the academic and did nothing of the cultural, then there's no way we see the growth that we have. So I'll tell you just a couple things here. Just got a kind of a list that we have made. Academic changes, really, we kind of just went back to the data. Data-driven decisions, looking at students' scores and diving deep into those. What do those scores actually mean instead of just a number on a paper? Where do we have the greatest needs? We created math and ELA labs to provide further support for students. We created goes kind of along with the cultural piece. We called it the Race to I Learn, which is the race writing strategy. We did a writing boot camp. We tried to maximize our RTI time. We have a daily RTI time. When we first started, it was only about 22 minutes. Something I was pretty proud of what we did. We looked at our daily schedule and said, where do we need changes? We decided to add a few minutes to our day. We added it strictly to RTI. So RTI is approximately 35 minutes now, which given us a little bit more time to get kids. In junior high, it takes a solid 3 to 5 minutes to get everyone settled down and going. And so by the time we did that with our original time frame, it was pushed. So, but we created this thing called Race to I Learn. We actually competed against our elementary, and we did a plethora of things. We did a writing boot camp where we talked about the hamburger strategy, which I have my 2 English teachers here, or 2 of the 3, and how to write a paragraph. We did this school-wide at the same time. Everyone did it at the same time, and we really emphasized the importance of writing, being able to read, pull text evidence. So we continued that into last year, where we had a weekly prompt of an iLearn standard that we were weak in. We did 5 math and 5 English, and we did a competition by grade level, by percentage, who passed it or who would have passed it per iLearn's grading standards. And we just tried to incentivize and create a lot of fun things, but with a guided focus. We did a spiral review initiative where all teachers start their classes for the first 5 to 10 minutes reviewing important topics all throughout the year, so keeping it fresh in the minds. It's not just, okay, we covered this 1 week and then we moved on and never touched it again. I think that was very important. We provided a lot of PD for our staff. Last year, our focus and into this year has been critical thinking. How do we teach kids to be thinkers and actually think critically? We did a lot of depth of knowledge training and what the differences are and types of questions. But really the big piece, to be honest with you, those were kind of the main academic things. Those were very, very important. But to be honest with you, I'd be lying if I said the culture of the building has not increased tenfold since we've been there, and that's really what's done it. You know, our goal is to make the the school an enjoyable place. I don't know if I can ever get kids to come and say, I really want to come to school, and I'm super excited to be here and do work, but we try to make it as fun as possible. We incentivize as much as we possibly can, all the way down to which side of the lunchroom can be quieter, you know, a little bit more under control. They get to leave early, and then on the 10th day of winning, you get ice cream for your half. Just those type of culture changes has meant the world to our kids. And especially our kids of all of our subcategories that I believe where we won this award, we really focused on student relationships. Could not stress that enough in schools. It is a little easier being a smaller school. We're able, for example, this year we have a student who has struggled a little bit academically and behaviorally. You just got to find what motivates them, and that's the challenge. He loves Subway, so every Friday, if he's had a good week, I buy him a foot-long Subway sandwich. And he eats half of it for lunch, he takes the other half home for the weekend. And that just means the world to him, and he's had a fantastic 4 weeks since we found that. So just meeting the kids where they are, understanding trauma as well. We've been through a pretty tough 2 or 3 years, and to say that didn't just grow the trauma, the amount of trauma that we have seen, whether it's a student losing a parent, for any kinds of reasons, students that are foster kids that are moving around a lot. We have our fair share. And just training our teachers, we gave them a lot of training on understanding trauma, what it does to the neuroscience of it, to the brain, and how kids will act out of defense through this trauma. And so it has been a transition that has just been fantastic for our staff. So. We update our MTSS process where we focus on positive supports, not just, hey, you do this, this is your consequence. We really tried to find what motivated students in a positive way. We implemented every quarter we have a major event at the end. I believe on Friday we're going bowling. We're taking the 2 grades bowling in the morning and the last 3 grades bowling in the afternoon to get out of school. And you earn that by just completing your assignments and acting appropriately. We never said you had to get straight A's or anything. We just want to see effort, and we try to reward effort. And I think the kids see that and really appreciate that. So we've implemented that. We have our other events throughout the year. We created a positive referral program where teachers were able to call out students in a positive way. If they did something above and beyond. We also created what's called the Appreciation Station. Students were able to call out other students anonymously. They would just write a note, put this in a little mailbox that we have. We take it out every Friday, and we would call them down to the office for just being recognized in front of the school. So again, just kind of a plethora of positive incentives coupled with some data-driven academic changes. Has kind of made the nice mix there that led us to where we are today.
What percentage of your students are Hispanic?
Percentage, it is a lower percentage. I would say approximately 5%.
Okay, 5%. What is your student I was thinking it was a little bit higher. What does your student population look like?
Student population as far as just overall numbers? Overall numbers, we have about 1050 in our district.
Yeah, okay.
So we're a little smaller
What's your
school.
free reduced lunch rate?
Free and reduced lunch we're about 55%.
Okay,
That's
so
our-
above state average?
Oh, yes. That's probably our subcategory that really made a difference in this, because we have a high free and reduced lunch population.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There are multiple other things that I could certainly highlight. I don't know if other board members, maybe we should hear from all of you and then talk a little bit more. You can keep going.
No, that's my presentation. I was going to open up for questions.
Are you going to speak? Our teachers?
They have said that if they get asked a question, they will speak, but they,
Leaving it up to him.
Yes.
they're here for.
This is a little different
Then,
for us.
yes, 5 adults versus 25 students in a class,
But
right?
please feel free to ask them questions, so. by
Well,
all
one,
means.
one thing I did want to highlight, walking in, and I think it was Miss Cooper, who's sixth grade English. And why don't you talk about your sixth grade English scores? Because I know you went up, and that is the one area the rest of the statewide we went down. So talk about sixth grade English a bit, and what you do as a teacher, and how you were able to go up so much.
Yeah, that's one big thing, I think, is I was fifth grade up until last year.
Oh.
And so I had a large portion of those kids. We were kind of a hybrid program where some of our kids moved. We were not just solely in one classroom all day. We co-taught science and social studies. So I had at least half the grade, so I already knew them. I already had a relationship with them. I was already Zooming with them during COVID. You know, we already knew a lot of their needs. So then when I moved to sixth grade, you know, I already knew where they were for a good portion of them. I didn't have any gifted and talented students in fifth grade, so that was a learning curve. Had to do some PD and things like that to learn how to meet them, because I was not familiar with how to meet them where they were. But that really helped, and just like Mr. Boyer said, getting to know our kids. And yes, we have academic goals. Yes, we have numbers that need to be met, but we need to know those kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that helped.
Yeah. And Mrs. Volkening, come on up. Let's make sure you're both out of the classroom today, and you're our resident expert teachers here. So what do you attribute to the success at your school?
Like they said, that getting to know the students, I have my classroom open all the time for students to come and work. We both do the tutoring. She does the sixth grade tutoring twice a week. I run the eighth grade tutoring. I check in, not just for English, but I'm like, okay, come up, let's look at all of your classes. What are you missing? Like, how can we get it better? Even if we can't get it this 9 weeks, what can we do next 9 weeks to get a head start so we don't get behind or whatever the reason? I let kids come in at lunch. I had a group last year who was probably some of the lower kids who probably thought, I'm done. I'm not gonna get any better, whatever. Started coming in because I was like, you have missing assignments, come in at lunch to get them done. And then they just stayed there for the rest of the year, and they just kept coming in whether they had assignments or not. And it was just a place where they could be, they could talk to me, to each other, and it would just really created that relationship with them.
Did you have 15 in there yesterday-ish?
I had so many in there yesterday. End of the 9 weeks, so they're all coming in to finish up projects and stuff. But yeah, I had, the last couple of weeks, a bunch of kids have been coming in just because they know it's a place that they can come in, work, but not feel like that it's a detention or something like that.
Yeah. Other board members, any reflections or questions?
Good morning. Just a quick question, and kudos to a job well done on everything that you all have accomplished. So I'm curious to know, from the teacher perspective, oftentimes when there are changes to how we've normally done things, sometimes there's some pushback to those changes. So can you kind of talk us through, or maybe even the principal, kind of talk us through how you dealt with the pushback that you may have received? And I'm making an assumption that you did receive some pushback. So if that assumption is incorrect, please correct me, but how did you work through that?
And to give you a minute to think, just so you know some background context on this guy, he was a math teacher, great math teacher for years, and then became essentially a building principal, director of an Excel center. So he's been in both roles. You've also been in the business world, but you saw the light and came to education. So on that note, you're free to respond.
Ms. Cooper, I think, would be a fantastic person to respond to this one on the teacher
I
side.
tend to be the one that's like the word on the street, like, hey, let's.
Do you want to come up to the mic then, Ms. Cooper, so people at home can hear you?
So when, I think just one piece of this, when we first started talking about like the race to iLearn, we all got the sheet of the standards with those really ugly red triangles and exclamation points
Yeah.
that say like, this is where you're not doing well.
Yes.
And they kind of wanted that to be a focus for a lot of those academic gains, a lot of those things that we were working on in RTI. And so I think to begin with, all of us math and language teachers were stressed about that because
Yeah.
they were from us. They were standards that we had to put a little extra work in. But at the end of the day, we knew that those things needed to be met, and if everybody was going to be buying into that, and all of the teachers in RTI were going to be focused, eventually that helped relax that a little bit. I mean, it was work at the beginning, because it was stressful, and we kind of talked about that, but in the long run, we knew it was worth it, because our kids needed that, and everybody was going to be working on those 6 standards of math and language, so that's just one part of it, I think.
So from the administrator side, did we have pushback? A little bit. I mean, always change is hard. But I believe that the building, when I came in, they were ready for a change, staff-wise, school, like student-wise as well, that they welcomed it. The biggest thing as a leader that I try to do, I don't try to make any quick decisions. I try to involve my team leaders, with 2 of them right here, before I make any decisions for the school. And I think when you do that, you have a lot more buy-in. And so I try to do a lot of, again, let's circle the wagons, let's talk about this before we make any decisions. Matter of fact, these are the 2 that normally I'll go to Megan down to her room second period and say, hey, I got this idea, what do you think about this? Over the summer, I'm texting Darcy as she's riding her boat, saying, hey, what do you, like the first 3 days, I want to change the first 3 days. Like, what are some things that we can, I want them to come back to school and celebrate. And so, you know, I bounce ideas. When you involve everyone in the process, it makes it a lot easier. So to sum it up.
Great, thank you.
And proof that educators never stop thinking,
Ever.
even on a boat in the summer.
Yeah,
never.
What were you going to add, Ms.
I
Cooper?
just think I've worked at this building for 9 years, and I think I've always felt supported, but the last few years even more, with our administration and our school board and just teachers in general. It gets me a little emotional, because we're pretty blessed to work with you.
Oh, that's powerful. I hope the people at home could hear the emotion that you had as you shared that, because it matters who's on your team. We all live that, right? It really, really is important, so. Any other board members?
I've got a quick question. I taught junior high for 5 years, a couple years ago.
Tell them what you do now.
I teach high school. So my heart goes out to you. I just think this is an amazing story. You know, this just gives me hope. You know, with all the negative news from inflation to gas prices to learning loss, what you guys are doing is inspiring. I guess my question is, so you're giving up your lunch to work with kids. I love you for that, because, I mean, it's hard. You get like 22 minutes, 25 minutes, your time. You know, I hear that as a career educator, but it's our time. To have a principal with the old principal, you're right, not to say pal, but you guys are a team. And that's amazing. I think that's an art that's been lost over the years too, because we've got so many rules and so many structures, but how do you micro-target students, those marginalized students, to give up their time, because that's their favorite time of the day, to come in to get help? I mean, so if you could just enlighten me on how you do that, I'd love to hear that.
So last year it started as kind of like almost a requirement, like you're missing this, this, and this, you're not getting it done after school when you say for tutoring, so you're gonna come in, get it done, work on it a little bit, and then they just, I mean, it's not like a lunch detention, so I chat with them, I joke around with them. It's not like they're having to sit there quiet, can't talk to anybody type of thing. And so they still get to have that social time with their friends, and I get to kind of try to be a part of it a little bit too, to get that relationship going. And then, I mean, they just kept coming every day at lunch. They just, like, okay, you have to come this many days this week, and then they just showed up the next week, and the next week, and the next week after that. So it was just kind of them choosing, hey, this is a nice place to be, so I'm gonna.
And that's you. That's the power of a teacher.
They have an adult that cares,
Yeah.
and they see an adult that cares, and that's all it takes. Anymore, the biggest lesson I'm learning about students is that they don't care how smart you are. If they like you, they will run through a wall for you. And so they give up their lunch. They come in and they hang out with Ms. Volkman.
Any other board member?
Can so a lot of this, of course, this is change management, right?
Yes.
Is what we're talking about, which comes with stakeholder management. And you've talked a lot about internal, students, teachers, that piece. Talk a little bit about, just because I want to hear, because this is, as Greg said, a great story, so I want to hear the rest of the story, right? What did the external part of that look like? The parents, the community member, you know, the part that it takes a village to raise a scholar, right?
Yeah, so we have an active PTO that we really tried to make the PTO focused, teacher focused, and teacher appreciation. They've been very active. We have also been trying to increase our events that, like for example, this year we just created a Me and My Guy dance to bring in community members. We house a
What did
bingo
you just
night.
say?
Me and My Guy dance. It's a
Am I the only one who doesn't know what that is?
politically correct way to say father-daughter dance.
Oh,
I learned
okay,
that
okay, thank you. for
30
that.
seconds after I introduced that topic this year,
Okay,
so
got
you
it.
live and learn.
Yeah.
So we called it Me and My Guy Dance.
Yeah.
We had that this past weekend. We house a bi-weekly bingo for our community. We just try to get the community into our building as much as possible. We try to be transparent. We started a newsletter. I actually joined the 21st Century and use Canva now this year. My first 2 years just trying to get through COVID, it was kind of a Word doc that tried to look fancy and it didn't look good. So I joined 21st and we use Canva. I mean, just again, trying to get the word out there, lots of social media posts. And I think our community really has responded well.
Great.
Dr. Ernest, I'll tell you this, actually during the pandemic, our schools, like so many, acted as the resource hub for their communities. And the outpouring of support from various community members really didn't stop after the pandemic. I mean, all of these people who were willing to help in any way that they could are still willing to help in any way that they can. And we wouldn't stand a chance without it. It's, you know, we've talked about all of these different things. It's the people, you know. We have wonderful people who are willing to do whatever they can for kids, from school board members, from community members, administrators, and of course, our teachers. I'd put them up against anybody.
What do you attribute that not stop? This is interesting because this is a topic that almost everywhere I go, they talk about it. That families and community support really increased during COVID, right? And we've talked about that. And then it's become, how do we continue that? And in some places it hasn't, in other places it has, and that becomes a topic, right? Do you have anything you can point to or attribute? It sounds like you're doing a lot of engaging things to do that. Do you have any other thoughts on why that's continued?
One of the things that we have seen and heard frequently through conversations with a lot of parents is that these are the first positive experiences they've had in schools. While they were students, it wasn't someplace they loved to be. The only phone calls they would get as parents were that their child had done something wrong. So just to have that time to be part of that school community in a positive and uplifting way, I think has really changed the mindset for a lot of that. I don't think we can take credit for that, but I think that's a big piece of it.
Yes.
So again, blown away, kudos, just awesome job from everybody involved. Curiosity, obviously you got these 8th graders who have grown and achieved and doing these wonderful things. They're going to leave you, go to high school. So are you working on that transition to high school? Because the last thing you guys want to do is have all these wonderful, the growth and achievement and all that, and then all of a sudden it's a different environment. So yeah, I'm really curious as to how you're managing that transition.
Yeah, we just started vertical alignment meetings through the elementary, our building, and high school. I, as an 8th grade teacher, really try to hold my kids accountable, like have that high accountability type of thing. We just started like late policies across the school so that they know they can't just turn something in a month later and still get full credit for it type of thing. I remind the kids all throughout, like, you're about to be freshmen next year. Like, you need to make sure that you're bringing a pencil to class every day, or bringing your Chromebook is charged so that you can take your quiz that you know is happening today, that type of stuff. I just say, like, expectations, I think high expectations, students will rise to meet them if that's what you, like, set for them, so.
Thank you.
Our seventh grade language teacher was also a high school teacher.
You want to come up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really want to. because-
I know, I can tell, I can tell.
Our seventh grade language teacher was a high school teacher before, so he is already very familiar with the expectations and what they need to know when they get to high school. You know, he taught AP classes, I believe. And so when we had our vertical alignment meeting with them, all of us middle school teachers went to meet with the high school, and it was just like they were in their own world, talking the lingo of high school. And so he's already very familiar with that and can help lead into that probably more than me with the younger kids, so.
Great.
Excellent.
Final question, what's next for Charles A. Beard?
What's next? I'm an old basketball coach. You are never happy with where you're at. So, I mean, if you win the state one year, you want to win it again the next year. So what's next is continue to grow, get better, continue to use the data, continue to try to meet students where they are, create those relationships, and increase positivity to the best of our ability. And we've got the staff to do it. As Ms. Cooper said earlier, it's really who you work with, and we got a pretty good one. So that's where we're going.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with the state and driving over to do that. We sure appreciate it. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
We hope that you do win the state championship / Indiana Oscars next year.
That's right.
Education Oscars.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I'd like to invite, I think Carrie Polk-Meek, you're doing this presentation, literacy update for the board. I think last meeting, I high level shared, here are the monetary investments that are happening, Lilly Endowment and others. And Carrie's going to provide the board a little bit more detail and also open it up to questions or thoughts that you might have.
Yeah, so I think I should thank them for just filling my bucket a little bit. It was really wonderful just to hear. I live in Hagerstown, so hi neighbor, how are you? Yeah. So grateful for the schools that are out there doing all of this important work. So I am just going to talk very briefly about some of the current literacy data. The board has been presented with that information before, but I think it's an excellent way to just illuminate the Literacy Center and the work that's ahead. And then I'll move into the historic literacy investment from the Lilly Endowment, and then I'll take any thoughts or questions that you might have. So thank you for letting me be here today. What we know from the 2022 iRead results is that statewide proficiency rates for students increased 0.4 percentage points. We know, of course, that iRead only measures foundational reading skills, and those foundational reading skills are essential in order to be able to access all future learning opportunities. Passage rates overall peaked at 91% in the 2012-2013 school year, and since then have continued to fall. The 2022 passage rate was 81.6%, or 65,000 students that passed. And just looking at our iRead 3 results as a comparison by year, you can see that there has been a precipitous decline following the historic pandemic. And when we look at this, what we understand and know based on the 2022 iRead 3 results is that nearly 1 in 5 Hoosier students have not mastered foundational reading skills by the end of grade 3. Results remain 5.7 percentage points below pre-pandemic proficiency rates. And while we understand that some student populations experienced a significant improvement, we also know that other student populations will need evidence-based, intentional support to become strong readers. So, as you all know, Indiana, with the support of the Lilly Endowment, announced the largest ever financial investment in literacy in Indiana's history, with the goal of achieving a passage rate of 95% on iRead 3 by 2027. $60 million from the Lilly Endowment to the Indiana Department of Education, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that investment will do. $26 million from the IDOE through ESSER II funds in the lit cadre that has already started, which is also really exciting work. Up to $25 million from the Lilly Endowment to Indiana's teacher prep program, and that equals a $111 million combined investment. The investment is intentionally focused on providing support tools and resources for our educators who teach reading. The focus is science of reading, that foundational framework. As you know, the science of reading is a research-based 50 years, 5 decades of research that integrates instructional practice with efforts focused around phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And we have been so privileged to have some of the best science of reading experts, researchers at our disposal as a result of this endowment already. The investment will provide support to educators. Currently, we have 43 schools across the state that are piloting the science of reading with instructional coaches. That includes recruitment, oversight, training that is provided through UND's cell. And I'll talk a little bit more about that if you'd like me to, because we have that ongoing collaboration and professional development has been really thoughtful and has just been an excellent experience for those 43 schools. In the future, with additional financial support from Lilly, we hope to expand and reach approximately 60% of elementary schools by the end of the 25-26 school year. And so that would be, if my math is correct, 600 schools that would receive support through the endowment, through coaching, and again, science of reading framework that includes unbelievable amounts of professional development. We'll also be able to provide stipends for teachers, up to $1,200 to educators who participate in professional development based on the science of reading, and that will be available to all K-3 educators in the state of Indiana. And it will also allow for us to provide targeted support for Indiana students with reading challenges that include students in special education, students of color, students whose primary language is not English, and students from low-income households. It will also establish a literacy center at the Indiana Department of Education that is meant to serve as a one-stop shop to oversee literacy efforts, manage research and evaluation of those efforts, and to maintain quality technical assistance for all educators. And we'll recruit additional staff to provide the science of reading technical assistance to schools, and that will include additional modules and support through the Indiana Learning Lab. So we're very excited about that as well. And this actually kicked off yesterday, but the Lilly Endowment will make an additional $25 million available to help support Indiana's future elementary teachers. That funding will be available for Indiana's colleges and universities that want to enhance their efforts to prepare future Indiana elementary teachers to use the science of reading. And that was an amazing kickoff. What questions or thoughts do you have? So happy to answer those. Yeah.
So, yeah, again, well done. Again, huge thanks to the endowment for their support of this. I mean, that's fantastic. I really want to drill in a little bit on the schools of education, because a couple words jumped out at me. Like one of them was that funding's available for universities that want to enhance their efforts using. How many? I know we have a lot of colleges and universities in the state, most of which have a teacher prep program. If, and this may be off the top of your head, but how many already do an excellent job of preparing their elementary teacher candidates using the science of reading? Do you have a sense of that?
We've asked that question, and there are several throughout the state of Indiana that have intentionally placed science of reading into their early educator programs. I don't have an exact number, and that is one of the things that, as Lilly has started to enter into this space, that we'll be able to know and understand. So we want to be really thoughtful too when we think about, and this is what was so exciting yesterday, about the presentation that Lily provided is how we're defining science of reading, right? Quality science of reading instruction, and what that looks like when we're preparing teachers to enter into our classrooms and be prepared to do science of reading. Lilly Endowment, with a panel of national experts, provided a common definition. So ways of thinking about what the science of reading should look like and sound like in teacher prep programs and in our classrooms. So I think what you're asking me would be how many are preparing them or believe that they are, or how many are, right? And I think that's the difference.
Yeah, because I think something, and again, speaking of someone who hires, obviously I'm at the high school level, but on behalf of all my elementary brothers and sisters throughout the
Right.
state, like it'd be really useful for the department to publicize, here are the universities that are already doing this. So when you're going to hire elementary teachers, you know if you get someone from, college X or university Y, that they've been prepped in the right way. And it also, one of my things is if the other universities who are not doing that, for whatever reason, when they are not on the list, it may spur some work on their part to say, well, we should be on that list because now you've elevated those universities, those colleges, graduates as really well prepared to do the science of reading, which is a huge emphasis, and we're not doing that. We probably should. And I think it's just shining a light on the exemplars, a lot of times will help those who are not come up to speed. Because I think it's critical, and if, again, universities are what they are, some are going to be a little slower to respond because of whatever philosophy they might have. I think if the state's going this way and going all in on this, I think you've got to be specific and say, these are the ones that are doing a great job of this. We hope everybody else will join that list as well.
So
Can I? Oh, sorry.
who chimed in on the phone?
Iris.
Oh, Iris.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Iris.
On that note, it would also, and I think it's right in line with what Scott is saying, is as a board member in North Central or Northeast West Indiana, having just a one-pager that I could take. I'm very close with all the colleges and universities in our northern half of the state, and so being able as a board member to go talk to those colleges and universities and school of eds with just a one-pager, this is how you get involved if you didn't know about it, so that we can be armed with valuable information so they can take action right away, if that's possible.
Yeah, and let me add a little bit more about the event yesterday. The event yesterday was in a large conference room. Lilly Endowment was the primary sponsor. We were obviously there as a partner to them. But this was an opt-in, to your point, Scott. This was an opt-in. We had presidents of universities who took their entire day to attend. And I'll name, I saw Ball State's president, President Mearns. I saw Ivy Tech's president, Sue Elsperman. I saw Marian University's president, Dan Elsner. All took their whole day to learn more about the science of reading. Additionally, we had provost, deans of education from nearly every college, if not every college in the state of Indiana, public and private, at the table yesterday. The next piece of this is Lilly Endowment, as Carrie mentioned, has $25 million that they will offer in competitive grants for higher education who wants to ensure that all of their teachers are being taught through science of reading strategies. And I think we're going to learn a lot through that grant application. Scott, to your question, and I think it makes sense to openly publish a list of higher ed who received that grant and who are leaning in, partnering with us. Additionally, I would add, in addition to the professional development yesterday for the higher ed community. There was also a lot of policy discussion. And something I think that even the board, as board members, going into 23 session, that we can contemplate. And then the other thing I want to add is when we think about, and one of the speakers said this, moving towards 95% of children read in Indiana by 2027. Moving towards that, one of the speakers said it's really more than just a partnership, it's an alliance. It is a tight-knit alliance that you are mission forward. So while we've really started with K through 3 teachers, because they have our students day in and day out, we know, and then higher education convening yesterday to train our future population. We also know that there are a couple of other key stakeholder groups that we are seeking to target, including our school administrators. We just heard from one school and the value of that administrator understanding the instructional strategies and also driving that vision. We also know that our school librarians and media specialists are the hub of a school in terms of reading. And so there's a future announcement that we'll make about convening them. There's also a big question yesterday is what about the kids in our classrooms right now at the middle school and high school space who can't read, our secondary students? And what are we doing about those students? And that's, another important discussion, another layer of discussion that we must urgently have. Yesterday, the data and the national researchers who came to the table connected reading. We always talk about it, connecting it through graduation rate. If you don't pass IRE 3, you're 35% less likely to graduate. It's major. It's also, they connected it yesterday to recidivism in prisons, that many of our prisoners can't read. Obviously, it's connected to a number of different economic implications. So this is our most urgent movement that we have to lean in on as state. So anyway, I'm going to step off the soapbox for a minute and take a breath.
Yesterday was,
Because I know I'm preaching to the choir with this group. But
yesterday
go ahead.
was amazingly hopeful.
It
And
was.
the dialogue and the conversations were overwhelmingly positive. The trajectory felt, I mean, we left feeling a sense of connectedness. And it was one of those moments, and certainly I just joined the department a year ago, but in the year that I've been here, it was one of those moments where you're like, you've been involved in something, you're like, wow, that just happened.
Yeah.
Like all the way home. Wow, that just happened. Like it's an amazing moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still lots of work to do. And certainly a lot of the professional development that we are building out does include administrators. It does include other stakeholder groups. Everybody that needs to be aware. And the secondary as well. We've already started initially building out some science of reading for our secondary partners as well within the Learning Lab, and we'll continue to do so.
And then with Iris's question about the one-pager, the other thing that might be helpful on that is, again, the high-level information, but also who do they contact for more information?
Gotcha.
If board members could have that in their back pocket, so if they're asked, I think that would be important. Are we hearing interest from schools who want to be a part of this?
Absolutely overwhelming.
Your email's probably smart.
Our emails are swarmed and in a good way.
Yeah.
And our partner, SBOE, have created the interest forms. And of course, we have a large number of schools that have already expressed an interest just through those interest forms. And the process of recruitment really started in earnest this week relative to the data collection and some of the other things that the department is doing to guide that. But yes, overwhelming. I mean, our greatest hope is that we have so many that, I mean, we have more than 600, right? Like it's so many that
If we have more than 600, we're going to knock on the General Assembly's
we're going to
door.
figure out how to figure it out is what we're going to do.
That's what we're gonna-
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just for any school listening or any person listening who is close to a school, if an elementary school in Indiana wants to have a science of reading instructional coach, partner in this grant, who should they contact?
Who should they contact? They can start by contacting me at the Indiana Department of Ed. Pay very close attention to that weekly newsletter that comes out from Dr. Jenner.
Yep, every Friday morning.
Every Friday morning, starting next week, we will have very intentional messaging that sends them directly to the link, that goes directly to the interest form, that allows them to let CELUINDI and the Indiana Department of Education know that they're interested in being part of the Lit Build Out.
And I did have a school yesterday or the day before, I can't even remember which one at this point, but asked me if they applied for that first round that's happening right now, the initial, and they weren't able to get in that one, should they apply again? And absolutely.
Absolutely.
100%.
100%.
Because we're now able to go from around 50 to 600.
Yeah.
So it's a game changer.
Yeah,
And
it
again,
is.
thank you to Lilly Endowment. Thank you for your leadership. Carrie, we really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts? Yes, sir.
I have a quick question.
Of course.
So I'm looking at the kind of the buckets of challenges for students. So those students that are in special education, students of color, students whose primary language is not English. And I don't know if you are the person that I should pose this question to or not, but what intentionality is given to recruitment for teachers, potential teachers that are specializing particularly in those areas? So for example, what is happening to teachers who want to focus on special education? Are there teachers in the pipeline who have a passion for working with students whose primary language is not English? What is the recruitment effort for teachers of color who could possibly help with those students of color who are having trouble with reading? So I don't know if you can answer that question or not, but that's kind of where my mind is.
Yeah, and I appreciate that question very much. So one of the things that we're doing during this recruitment phase, which we did during the first cadre as well, is the Indiana Department of Education is just combing through our data. So we will intentionally invite some schools to join us. And the intentionality includes thinking about how they are serving some of the students that you just mentioned. So special ed, we're working with the special ed department where some schools that could use some additional help. Our ELL department, the Department of School Transformation, all of those are embedded. And intentionally, we think about how we're going to invite those schools to join the cadre. It is still voluntary. So that there's some real thought and focus about getting those schools to join us first. And I think the other thing that you're asking me is how we're going to intentionally build out the educator professional development through the lab. That includes stipends as well. So if we have list of schools that don't choose to join us, and so maybe their educators don't have the opportunity to be trained initially, how that additional training that's available in the lab would let some educators do it despite that, right, or in addition to. And again, working very diligently with the other departments in the academics team to make sure that we're being very thoughtful about how we roll that out and that we're finding people that need it immediately. We have to think about, we go back to those good cause exemptions, which we've talked about a lot. And so much of that then includes special educators who are still working with kids in grades 5, 6, 7, and 8 that still require very intentional practice and focus in foundational reading skills. It wouldn't make sense to exclude special educators that are working in the K-12 space, frankly, in foundational reading skill training. So a lot of thought and intentionality there.
I wonder too, William's questions, kind of making me think about how we can really leverage our teacher supply demand marketplace. And I wonder, Dr. Estes is not here today. She's maybe listening, if not, I'll text her. But Dr. Estes, it'd be curious to ask her if a teacher, as we move this direction, if a teacher is certified in science of reading, through this training, or letters, or, I mean, there are a number
Yeah.
of different, right? I wonder if there's even a filter option that schools could use as they're trying to attract candidates.
Yeah.
Because right now we have, as you know, we have our demand side up from our schools. We are building out our supply side, which will come later this winter. And I wonder if there's a filter option because of our emphasis on reading in Indiana. It might be interesting to see what's possible there. I appreciate that question.
It's a great question.
Have you had schools targeted that turned you down,
Yes.
that you've invited?
We
What-
have.
What were the, that kind of blows my mind. What, well, I mean, it does, right? Why?
Why?
Yeah, can you give some anecdotal kind of why to that? I'm curious.
It's a great question.
It
And
is
it's
a-
something that I think, and I'll just
course.
set it up.
Don't sugarcoat it.
Don't worry. You don't never have to worry about that with me, you know that. If we know that reading is a direct link to all of those pieces, those future life implications, and we know the level of urgency, and we're not meeting, and there's a school that's potentially struggling, if an olive branch is given, I think you've got to seize the olive branch for kids, because there's no other, I mean, we have to. So why don't you share with Dr. Ernest any thoughts that you have and how we're, yeah.
I think we typically heard the same responses. In a couple of cases, we didn't get one at all, right? And I think there was just an overwhelming sense of maybe the number of emails, the number of initiatives. Really, some of the schools were just very honest. We had some additional ESSER funds. We started training in the science of reading and adopted some curriculum in the previous year in the science of reading. It doesn't make sense for us, or we would be fearful of messaging to the
They were
people that
already
we
moving
serve
down that road.
that we are going another way now, or that what we had done wasn't correct. I think that was often the most frequent. I think there's always a level of, a pride and autonomy attached within districts, right? And a little bit of sometimes, for lack of a better way to describe it, of, pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we've got this. Thank you, but we've got this. We know what our kids need, or we know what our districts need. And I don't think that was, there was no ill intent relative to that, right? They're there to serve, or believe that they're serving students well. I do think what's different this year, though, is that we have a year under our belts. Conversations have taken place, between districts, between principals, between schools, between community partners, and the momentum is there now. So my sense is today that some that had been invited to join us and didn't are probably now very ready to do so.
And we saw that. I would add, we saw that even with the opt-in to IRE 3 in the second grade. We had some districts who reached out later and were like, man, we should have done that, right? I understand, a lot of things
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So, but we will be, I think, when you build an alliance and drive towards a goal, you have to be so incredibly honest about what's working and what's not, and who's coming along, who maybe needs additional support. And we will be very open about that ahead.
And I know Scott wants to go too, but I want to just because when you were talking there, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if we had a dashboard where you could just push a button and it told us what schools should be, because that's my vision, right? I mean, because that's what industry does with all their artificial intelligence. They push I'm big on that, right? Put in your parameters for reading, and it tells you which schools that need help. So, but that becomes a part of the discussion that I think we even started last week, is how do we, in a world where we want that word accountability to be more of a help and a
Support.
and yes, and we're putting the data out there, and I truly believe that. But at the same time, what's the support look like? Because we have an obligation to our scholars to make sure that they're getting what they need. And I understand those replies to not in those cases, right? But I just think it's like, gosh, I've got help to do this, and this is our priority. What's my obligation to do that, right? So I think that's an important piece. So sorry I jumped in there ahead of you. I just think this is a place where this gives credence to what we're gonna do with the dashboard too, right? And how we're gonna use that data to help and support schools.
Yeah. So I think that's the follow-on to this is that, and again, I totally get autonomy, local control, the whole thing, right? And fully support that. But there is also the other side to autonomy and local control, which says, hey, we made the decision not to do this because we're doing this other thing. And I would say, great. And I think you use word, they're kind of saying, we got this. If the dashboard shows us in another year, 2 years, 3 years, that you don't got this, then we go back. I mean, their community needs to know they had the opportunity, a funded opportunity, with all the support and help. They chose not to do it, and it didn't work. So everybody involved in that decision-making process, right? Superintendents, school boards, teachers, right, whatever, need to be held accountable for that. Because what they've done then is told 2 years, 3 years, 4 years worth of students who are not getting the kind of instruction that they need to go tell those parents, hey, we're sorry, we had the opportunity, we didn't do it because we wanted to do it ourselves, and it didn't work. Like, that's a big, I can't overemphasize how big of a decision that is to mess with, if you will, the lives of those students because of every statistic you all have talked about in terms of not being successful in IREAD 3, the downstream impact of that, their community needs to know. And I think it's just, and again, I fully support everybody's decision not to do this because of something else they want to do and have the autonomy, they should do that. And if it works, and it's better than what the state is doing, we ought to highlight that and say, congratulations, you guys are the smartest people in the state of Indiana when it comes to reading. But if it doesn't, I think there's also the flip side of that that says, look, you made a decision, it didn't work. And there is accountability to that, because I really want people to think hard about the decisions they're making on all of this. And I would also include, that does include the college prep programs, right, the teacher prep programs, it includes these decisions, because this is, as Dr. Jenner put it, this is fundamental and the most important thing that we're doing in education in this state. And we can't be messing around with people who just don't want to do it because the state is saying something.
And on that note, I will just add, the vast majority of our schools, the vast majority are leaning in.
Which is perfect.
Truly. I mean, they are phenomenal in terms of how they're, like, yes, we see that it's something that we have to address, and we're in. And we will be, again, very open with the board, with the public, on the data and who's joining the alliance to move this forward. The only other thing I'll add, and then I do want to switch to the next presentation, we've asked through the School Board Association and actually several different school board chairs to consider adopting the 95% goal by 2027 locally through like a resolution. Because, and a couple of you mentioned it, as a state, Indiana is a very local control state. We believe in the power of communities. That's where the change happens. Charles A. Beard, prime example. They're doing it there, right? So the power of a community is if you get behind a goal for kids. And so that would be one charge that I would share with, maybe Charles A. Beard can be the first, although I think Fort Wayne's trying to be the first. Steve Corona, I'm calling him out right now. Steve, get that vote through. Maybe Charles A. Beard could also do it. But we need communities to adopt the goal. It's never going to be the state of Indiana that does it. It's always going to be local leaders. local teachers, local community partners who make it happen. So pass a resolution, local boards. Say that you're gonna make this a priority and link arms with us. Let's do it. We have to. All right, thank you,
Thank
Carrie.
you.
Let's have our Indiana Learns team come on up for a final presentation of the day. Alicia Gatewood, Sienna Murphy, and Kristen Graham. And I will just tell the board in full disclosure, I have a speaking event in Northern Indiana, so I got a text, I have to be on the road at 10:45. So,
We're going to be short into the.
that's all right. This is really good discussion that we've had today, and I appreciate it. So, all right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Jenner and state board members. I'm here with Kristen Grimmie and Shauna Murphy from Mind Trust to give you an update to the Student Enrichment Grant Program. Oh, I have to do that. Oh, okay. I'll get right on that. Okay. Clearly, this is my first time.
We know that it's not your first time.
So a little bit of background. In March of 2022, the General Assembly authorized HEA 1251, creating the Student Enrichment Grants Program. As a part of the legislation, the Department of Ed was designated as the entity responsible for determining how to best administer the program. In the summer of this year, we contracted with the Mind Trust to manage implementation of this program, and it was named Indiana Learns. I do want to note that Mind Trust was hired, that Mind Trust has hired a team to manage the implementation of this program. They will facilitate the building of a custom platform to implement the program, and they are facilitating all of the contracts with learning partners, which I'll talk about in a little bit, serving as a single point of contact for the department. Okay, so how it works, the program will officially launch here shortly. I believe that's in 10 days, on October 15th. Families will verify eligibility through the Indiana Learns portal. All eligible students will receive access to a one-time grant of $500. Students may be eligible for up to $1,000 in schools or corporations that provide an additional $250 grant matched by the state. Students may use awarded grant funding to receive in-person, virtual, or hybrid tutoring opportunities as an approved learning partner in math or reading. Learning partners submit an application that is reviewed by both Indiana Learns, the Indiana Learns team, and a statewide review committee, which ultimately determines which partners are approved. So we have a few key terms that we want to just go over real quick so that you know what we're talking about as we present this morning. We have champion schools, and those are schools with eligible students that have activated the grant. We got our first list yesterday, so we're pretty excited about that. We have Champion Plus schools, and those are schools that have agreed to provide the $250 match for students, which will make the eligible amount $1,000. And we have organizational learning partners. Those are approved providers of enrichment services that can be both private entities or school corporations. Champion Plus schools are eligible to apply and be approved as organizational learning partners. What are the requirements to be an organizational learning partner? They need to provide services outside of regular school hours, utilize licensed teachers, retired teachers, or students enrolled in teacher prep programs, provide a minimum of 60 minutes per week in math or reading enrichment, maintain a 1-to-3 tutor-to-student ratio, keep the cost less than $100 per hour per student, and provide weekly progress reports to families. The student eligibility, eligible students must meet all of the following criteria. They must reside in Indiana. They have to currently be enrolled and attending an Indiana school. They need to qualify for federal free or reduced lunch, and they needed to score below proficiency in both mathematics and English language arts on iLearn as a 3rd or 4th grade student in the spring of 2022. Note, some students achieving approaching proficiency, students achieving approaching proficiency do not qualify for this programming. So I'm going to hand it over to Kristen Grimmie so she can share further information.
Thank you, Alicia. I just first want to say that the Mind Trust is thrilled to be partnering with the Department of Education to be able to support students and families across the state. So thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Jenner. As Alicia mentioned, we are on track to launch a pilot phase of the program in just a few weeks. That pilot is going to help us get resources to students and families who are ready to receive services right now, and to schools who are providing those services likely already in a way that just qualified for the program. This is a nationally unique program in the way that Indiana structured it, and so we're very excited to get started and learn some things in this pilot phase too, while also providing some time to work with a number of school corporations and schools who are very interested in the program. And we just have to work through all of the structure and implementation to get ready for a full launch in January. We are talking to partners across the state daily. I've talked to 2 superintendents already this morning about becoming organizational learning partners and providing matching grants for their kiddos and families. The legislation also allowed for retired and prospective teachers to serve as learning providers, and that's another part that we're working through this fall to get to full implementation in January. And then we know that it's going to take some time, that there are many school corporations who have smaller federal budgets, who do still have eligible students, whose budgets are really already set for this school year, and we're working with them to make sure that they're able to participate in a fully scaled program next school year. So those are kind of a little bit of the phases that we're rolling out, and making sure that we're able to deploy really high quality enrichment services across the state in a variety of ways over the next 18 months. So I'm going to turn it over to Shauna now, who's leading the Indiana Learns team for the Mind Trust, to go through a few more of the implementation details and the various different aspects of the program. So, thank you.
Good morning, and appreciate the opportunity. And before I go into my slides, I struggle sticking to the script sometimes. One thing that I've already learned coming into this, and what's most exciting, is that regardless of where a school district corporation is located, everyone has wanted the same things for their children. So from districts as small as Knox to districts as large as IPS, everyone that I've talked to, they want to leverage this opportunity to support their kids, and that's exciting. So just to share some ways that we're working on this, we will go live on next Saturday, and that's been at the forefront of my mind for many weeks now. We're going to pilot the program, so when we launch on the 15th, we'll go through December, and during that time, we have goals of bringing in at least 3,000 students from across the state. And on Monday, we had our first review committee and have approved organizational learning partners. So during the pilot phase, when we open up, we really want to pay attention to the take rates and really do some on-the-ground work to drive participation rates with our schools on board as supporters, and then also working with our community organizations that are natural points of connections for our families. So after our initial launch, we will go to full implementation starting in January, and that process will run through June. And during that time, we will leverage at least 10,000 students and have 75 Champion Plus schools on board. And again, our Champion Plus schools are those school corporations that come on and provide the $250 match, thereby extending the amount of services that students can receive. From June through, from July 2023 through June 2024, we will continue an iterative process of adding organizational learning partners, adding Champion Plus schools, and also bringing on individual tutors. Our process currently is the individuals who indicate an interest in serving as a tutor. We're connecting them with approved learning partners who have the infrastructure in place to ensure the safety of our children, as well as the quality of instruction that was used to determine approval for the organizational partners. So on the 15th, I'm going to give a sneak peek of what can happen for a family. So student eligibility will be confirmed by the student's STN as well as their birth date. With the data that we've received from the department, if we have a complete match, the family, the parent or guardian who's signing up the student will agree in writing to the terms that are outlined in our legislation. At that point, they'll be able to come in and they will see that their accounts are populated. This may be a little too far in the weeds, but I'm just going to go there for a brief second. So what you see here is they will initially see available balance. Once they schedule a service, that balance will subtract the cost of the service and go into pending. Those, the funds will not be completely removed until an invoice is sent from a learning partner, approved, and then paid. So if a student signs up and doesn't show up, they don't lose money, but we have some processes in place to make sure that we are constantly in touch with the family so that we don't have that to occur. But all the services are provided on a reimbursement basis, and we only pay for services that have actually been approved and then rendered and then approved. We had our first Learning Partner Committee meeting on Monday, and it was fantastic. And by fantastic, I want to first say thank you to Dr. Jenner for pushing things out in the newsletter, and also thank you to the Indiana Association of School Principals, the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents, and the Indiana Small and Rural Schools Association. We have a diverse group of people who are very dedicated to following the rubric. And out of that process, the following organizations and schools are the very first Indiana Learns partners to come on board. Gary Community Schools, Greenwood Community Schools, Knox Community, Penn Harris Madison, School City of Mishawaka, and Wawasee Community Schools. This is the list that was approved. As of this morning, we have 68 applications that are sitting in queue to be reviewed. So this is moving. And
68 school corporation applications?
No, total applications.
Okay.
And I didn't break down how many schools.
Yeah, that's okay.
My apologies.
And that would also include, I think, IPS, Decatur Township, and Muncie. They stood with us at the press release.
Yes, and they are in process. They
I
are-
see.
Yeah.
So we have
yeah.
some in process.
We have some that are in process.
I got you, that
Yeah.
will be added to the list. There's some
Yes.
other superintendents who have reached out to say, we're all in, and so this list will grow. I got it.
And I just want to clarify, Dr. Jenner, those are all school corporations who have reached out and committed to matching funds. but
Yes.
They haven't necessarily applied to be a provider.
Oh, I follow.
So these are
Yep.
school corporations that have been approved to directly provide.
And the value of the provider is then your teachers locally can be paid for the tutoring that they are likely already doing. We heard from Miss Cooper, and gosh, I'm telling you what, I'm gonna say her name one more time. It's in my notes. Vulcaning. Never forget that, tell you. But we heard from them that they do, right, working lunch for students, and many stay after school. And so the value of being a provider is it opens your teachers up to getting paid for tutoring.
Yes, yes. And you can also see our organizational learning partners. And we're excited, and we have more to come. And now I'm just going to, Kristen is just going to walk you through one of our champion school providers, and then we'll open for questions.
So actually, Dr. Jenner, you gave us a perfect segue there into highlighting one of the school corporation learning providers, or Champion Plus learning providers that we call them, as exactly how it might work if you're already providing tutoring or just need to make some tweaks. What we're finding from most learning partners who are school corporations is that they're doing this and just need to change from maybe a 1-to-5 student ratio down to the 1-to-3 for these particular students. But just to give an example of Knox Community Schools, who agreed on short notice to be highlighted today, given that they were just approved, so we're grateful to them. They have 25 eligible students, and so their students, when they sign in to the Learning Partner Portal next Saturday, they will see $1,000 in their account. And they will then, when they click to explore services and choose a learning provider, they'll be automatically notified that Knox Community Schools is providing an aligned program at their school. And then they'll have the opportunity to just say, I'd like to apply my grant to the program at my school. Which then allows Knox to create really a budget of about $25,000, assuming that all students choose to participate and select them as a provider. What they're able to do then is to apply their $250, their matching funds, to the program from their regular federal grant procedures, that they're, whichever grant they're using to provide matching funds. And then they're able to invoice Indiana Learns for that $750 per student, the $500 base grant, and the additional $250, of state matching funds that comes together. So they're really taking about $6,200 of their own funds and then almost $19,000 of state funds that are coming in to help them support the tweaks that they've made to that existing program. So to your point, Dr. Jenner, there are school corporations across the state who have their teachers who are already dedicating time after school or out of school time before school to tutoring with students, and this is really giving school corporations additional resources to be able to support those activities.
You know, I've been asked, and most recently our team was asked on Friday in a session, well, where do we find the people to do it, right? They open with the barriers.
Yes, we understand.
We have to open with the solutions, and that we're going to do everything we can to try, because we have to. So Gary Community Schools, Greenwood Community Schools, Knox Community Schools, Penn Harris Madison Schools, School City of Mishawaka, Wawasee Community Schools, thank you for your leadership and leaning in, trying something new and different, because we have to, because what we've always been doing is not exactly working. And I'm really, really proud of those districts for leaning in.
Yeah, we're very excited to work with them. And we've talked to a number of other school districts who have said, we want to do this. We need to work with you to better understand how to tweak everything.
Yes.
So we're working to build resources and toolkits. But I have not talked to a single superintendent anywhere in the state who said, we don't want to do this or
Yeah.
want to engage in any way. It's just a matter of working out.
I have not personally spoken with anyone either,
Great. So,
but I'm ready if needed.
Can I ask a question on your Knox example? Just
Absolutely.
really quick.
Sure.
So, one, I love the portal piece because that gets us closer to every student having a debit card, right? Which is like my dream in the world. But, so if I'm with Knox and it comes up as Knox being a partner, I could still, as a student, choose to go to a Sylvan Learning Center or any of those other approved, right? I thought that was the way I understood it, but I wanted to make sure that was the way I understood
We
it.
just want to make sure that families know if there's something that's very easy for them to access that maybe they're already participating in, that, you know, if I'm a parent thinking, my student's already going to tutoring 3 times a week, I'm not going to use this. We want them to know they are using, they do have a way to use it.
Right, right.
even
No,
if they
and I think
don't
it's
have to
very
6 times
appropriate
a
that
week.
their school comes up. I just wanted to know if it was the.
No, they
that
can
could
still
go
make a
anywhere.
choice.
And living in a rural community in Indiana, our greatest tutors are our teachers. I mean, I've hired teachers myself for my own children, and because I can. And I think it's so wonderful that now some parents will have the option.
Yep.
Who, I mean, they might work their very hardest to support their family, likely do, and now they'll have the option to also have that disposable, have that income to have that money to pay for their child's tutoring. But just, again, circling back on your point, in Jefferson County, we look to our teachers.
And I had another conversation with a superintendent just this morning who said, I know that some of my teachers will want to do this.
Yeah.
I also know that some of my teachers will not.
Absolutely.
How can I, as a school corporation, facilitate bringing some retired teachers together to do
Yes.
this? So those are the kinds of creative solutions that we're seeing the
Yes.
superintendents come up with that we're working on for January. For that.
Engaging that retired community, that's a great idea. So, what other, yeah, go ahead. Can you, yeah, step to the mic, thanks.
We get to also highlight family choice. So the school it pops up, and that's great. But if that doesn't work for a family because they're playing after-school sports or something like that, then they don't feel like they're excluded. Or if it's a child who, you know, has a shortened day schedule for whatever reason, then they're able to still access and still get what they need in the space that they need it, that's best, that the family was able to make that decision, so.
Thank you.
What other questions do board members have?
Well, well, first of all, congrats on getting this up and off the ground this quickly. I mean, if you think about when the legislation passed and then figuring out what it means and all the process you go through.
That's the team.
That's-
They did that,
10
in
days,
full
Scott. We still
disclosure.
have 10 more days.
10 days. That's amazing. I think the question I have, and I think it's working with particularly some of our larger school corporations, getting the word out to parents that this is available and how it works, because it's a new concept of, hey, the state's going to give you, the parent, money to go do this thing that you choose to do. And I think and I'm sure, I know you guys are working with the school corporations on that communication piece. Do you want to highlight one that you know of that's like, that's ramping up, or maybe that you're not quite there yet, but you know, that, because I think that's and especially in a smaller school corporation, it's relatively easy. Like, you know, Knox has 25 kids. They can literally call those parents and say, hey, here's the thing. In a larger school corporation like IPS or Fort Wayne or other places, there might be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students who need this a lot. And so what's that communication plan, I guess?
Yeah, so we will do some direct mailers to families with student addresses that we were able to secure from the department. We recognize that many of those may be out of date,
Right.
as family information does often change, particularly in some of the school corporations that you're mentioning. But again, this is where I think we are working for a more full implementation in January and trying to work with those school corporations to identify specific times when the eligible students and their parents might already be together. Sure. Thinking about leveraging things like parent-teacher conferences to say, hey, your student is eligible for this. So identifying those touch points where parents and families will already be together. I think Shauna mentioned some community partners. We have an example in Indianapolis. Enroll Indy is already working right now to engage with many families to submit their school choices for next school year. And so we've talked to them recently about making sure they're informed about the program, the portal, that they know the criteria, and when they're sitting down with a 4th or a 5th grade family to support them on enrollment paperwork, saying, hey, just so you know, you're also likely eligible for this. Let's go to the website together.
Nice.
And I want to applaud to that note, Scott, the Indiana Principals Association, this was on your slide, the Indiana Principals Association, the Indiana Public School Superintendent Association, the Indiana Rural School Superintendents Association are all leaning in on this solution too. And it will be so key for those local leaders to really own this and think through this. And going in, notably, Indiana's gonna learn. And it's called Indiana Learns. I didn't mean to do that. But Indiana is going to learn from this so that we can improve in the future and better figure out how to engage our parents and families who need us the most. And so I look forward to continuing to hear your reflections and even our school principals, superintendents, and teachers' reflections as we try something new to help kids.
So I was going to respond from a principal perspective, because I still think I am
Yeah,
one most of the
you
time. And so there are amazing messaging systems out there, and this team, we all have each other's cell phone numbers, and we text and call and do all the things, all the hours. And so I believe that any of us would be willing to work with corporations or any entities to get that messaging out, get some wording out. But as a building principal, I knew that I could, in my messaging system local to my corporation, target student groups and get those words, get the words that I needed out to a particular group. So I think there will be lots of opportunity. Indiana Learns is already tweeting, so we're already retweeting and getting the word out as much as possible publicly as well.
Terrific.
Anyone else? Thank you, Alicia, Shauna, and Kristen for joining us today. We look forward to, again, hearing what's been successful and what we can learn in the future. So come back and see us here in a few months. Let us know. On that note, it's 10:36. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Aye.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
On the phone, are you in favor?
Aye.
We are.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Get out of here.
I know, I'm a sprint. I was getting all the
Friday.